Dun, 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 dun. Die, 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 Boukenger. Die, 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 Boukenger. That was a joke about Kamen Rider Gaim. Joke is a generous term. Anyway, this is the point of the video where we should jump cut to me sitting behind the table. I don't know how to do that, so close your eyes. Keep them closed. No peeking. Alright, and open. Look at that. Movie magic. Alright, folks. If you read the description of the video, you know why we're all here today. We're here to discuss Boukenger, the series as a whole, and more specifically the Mecha, what they did right, what they did wrong, what other series did wrong after them. Boukenger was a series that, I have to be honest, when I first looked at the catalog and saw the Mecha, I was not thrilled. Funny enough, Boukenger ended up also being the first season that I imported all of the Mecha. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it was also the first season that Bandai of America felt like, you know what, we're going to take all these toys and we're just going to remold them into crazy big chunks. I wasn't a fan of that. I liked having the correct sculpt, and it was also probably the year that I had some money. So I was like, all right, it's an anniversary season, let's import. And thank God that I did. The key thing that Boukenger did right, that a lot of other seasons did not do right, is that it knew the proper scale. It had smaller mecha, there was a lot more chrome on them, and they combined in a very solid fashion. I guess that's the best word for it. Let's look at some other examples. Exhibit A. A Geki Toja from the very popular Geki Ranger. Example B. Engine O from the very popular Power Rangers RPM. Look at these two. What do you see about them that is very different from a Daiboken? One of these things is not like the other. Yes, Daiboken, despite being a 5-part combiner compared to 2 3-part combiners, is a lot smaller and more compact. Now, normally, that might not be a big issue. You look at a Geki Toja, it has a lot of armament zords. Armament, easy for me to say. But it doesn't have a full final design where a lot of the mecha combine. It doesn't put them all on the legs and make them as shoes or slippers, and it doesn't have a bunch of arm junk. It doesn't have a combination like that at all. All of the individual pieces just ride alongside pretty much the Rhino, and that's its final combo. Now, you look at Engine O. Engine O, I want to love you. I really do. But look at you. You're a friggin' totem pole. Things just stack on top of each other. When it combines other Zords, it wears friggin' alligator slippers. Literally, alligator slippers. That's what they are. It has giant birds just hanging on the shoulders. There's no real combination to it, so to speak. Everything just hangs off of it. In fact, I've seen pictures, I've read stories. See the arm joints right here? They're very thin plastic. When you put a lot of weight on the shoulders and the arms, it snaps, it breaks off. People have had their toys completely ruined because of its very design. Doesn't that sound ridiculous to you? How do you design a toy that breaks on its own by just having it combined? Something is wrong there. You compare that to our friend here, Daiboken, and in fact, I'll show it to you while I keep talking about this. The other big example that I think a lot of people reference is Shinkenger. Now, in Shinkenger, if you've seen that, the final combination is about as hodgepodgey as you can get. The pink and the yellow Ranger Zords, the origami, they literally just fold back up into the triangle and the circle that they originally are, and they hang on the sides. They have no function whatsoever in the final combination. Now, granted, as you'll see in the Ultimate Daiboken that I'm combining now, the girl Zords don't get a much better shape. They really, as I'll do right now, I'll show you, you fold them up, like so, and they stick in the legs. That's it. Granted, they do provide some heft. They provide some bulk. Without them in there, you can see all the way to the back. It looks strange. I think the key difference, though, is that you can actually see them. You can see their part in the overall design. It might not be the most glamorous part, but it's a part nonetheless, and they're instantly recognizable. They don't hang off the sides. They're not utterly pointless. And this isn't the most perfect design in the world. You see the mixer and the crane on the back? They're kind of hanging off there. But the proportions are still pretty solid for the final design. That's going to be one of the main differences, is if you look at, say, the Boukenger, the final mecha, again, the proportions are ridiculous. It has giant hulking shoulders. It has ridiculously large feet. Why? Because they had nowhere else to put the mecha. It's like a giant Jenga design where you're wondering, did they even know what they were doing when they made this monstrosity? My assumption is no. They were really just throwing things together, which is an odd thought because, again, 2 years earlier, they did it correctly. What changed in those 2 years that they decided to, instead of go with a design that looked like it was intentional from day one, to a design that was really thrown together and completely uninspired? I don't know. Now, the one thing I will say, though, is that Boukenger, as its series itself, did a lot of other things right. It broke the mold, so to speak. Again, mold jokes, I'm talking about toys. It's entirely awful. I know these things, and yet I still do them. But Boukenger was a season that said, you know what? We know what a prototypical Red Ranger is. A Red Ranger is somebody who screams all the time, who rushes into battle, who kind of lucks into a lot of his ability. And they said, you know what? Screw that noise. We're going to take a Red Ranger who, yes, he's the leader of the team, and guess what? He earned that role. He's somebody who is incredibly competent. He's cool under pressure. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. When he does, he lets them weigh on him, but he still brushes himself off and he gets back into battle. The few times in the season where Akashi displayed any of those typical flamboyant, like, I'm spazzing out Red Ranger characteristics, they were shown to be a rarity. The other Rangers reacted like they couldn't believe that a Red Ranger could do such a thing. It was a refreshing bit of television. Heck, the theme of treasure hunting in general, have you seen Sentai do it before? I haven't seen Sentai do it before. Have you seen it do it after? No. And it had 4 distinct sets of villains that fought with each other just as much as they fought with the Rangers. Again, a very unique thing. The only downside, I would say, to Boukenger as a whole was that it didn't have a huge overarching story. It didn't have some story that really grabbed certain Rangers and used them to drive it forward. It was more just the inner struggles between each other and personally. You kind of knew who the characters were at the beginning of the series, and you kind of knew who they were at the end, and there wasn't a whole lot of difference. It was more the day-to-day seeing them tackle each individual problem. It was one of those things where if you like these characters, you're going to get a lot of them, and you're going to feel really fulfilled at the end. And that's what I liked about Boukenger. Boukenger, for me, is a season that I would say is about a B+, A- season. It's not mind-blowing, but it was different. And that's what's important sometimes. Just being different. Showing that you don't necessarily fit all of the stereotypes that you would see with a genre that at that time was 30 years old. And now it's 40 years old. Can you believe that? Anyway, my question that I like to pose to you out there is, what sort of toy design do you prefer? Do you prefer the type that I prefer, which is the Ultimate Daiboken? Yes, it combines most of the mecha from the season. Not all, granted, not all of them. But it combines most of them. And it creates a really unique, tight design. This thing can be broken apart into 2 separate mecha. It can also be put into a 9-part combiner that looks uniquely different from this one. It doesn't just lose the jetpack. It has a different head. It doesn't have the same chest. Do you like something like that where, yes, it's not the biggest, most glamorous thing in the world, but it's very functional? Or do you like something like, say, a Boukenger, where It's just nice to put all of the mecha together into one giant design, even if it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, even if it's not the most functional. Hey, it gets everything together, and that really feels complete to me. Or do you like more of a Geki Ranger, where everything doesn't combine? Everything doesn't have this nice, neat little package that it goes into. It's kind of clustery. Things, you know, the Purple Ranger, he's just a different leg. That's it. And the yellow one just sits around. And then they get a completely different mecha. Besides the armaments, there aren't really a whole lot of combinations that you can make with all these different mecha. But they're fun and they're unique in their own respect. So, which is it for you? I know where I stand on the issue, but I'd love to hear what you think. Again, guys, like this video if you like it, comment if you have something interesting to say, or you just want to say anything. Subscribe if you enjoyed the videos, and I will continue to make more of them. Thank you, and I finally say this. My prayer to the gods of Japan, of the Bandais, is to learn the age-old lesson that when it comes to mecha, less is more. Thank you.